The galaxy had always been a vast mystery, full of uncharted planets, abandoned spaceships, and strange phenomena. For years, the crew of the EOS, a deep space exploration vessel, had roamed the farthest reaches of space, mapping new worlds and studying celestial bodies. But on this particular mission, they were about to stumble upon something they couldn't even begin to understand. Captain Aurora Lyons stood at the helm of the EOS, her hands firmly gripping the controls as the stars passed by at an unimaginable speed. The ship had just completed an extensive survey of a nearby star system and was now en route to a region of space that was known for its unusual energy signatures. The EOS had been fitted with advanced scanning technology, capable of detecting faint signals from distant stars, yet this area had always been silent. At least, that's what the scientists had believed. "We're nearing the coordinates," said Commander Philip Grant, his voice steady, though there was a hint of excitement in it. "Scanners are picking up something unusual. It's not registering as a natural phenomenon." Aurora glanced over at him. "Unusual how? Give me something more than that." Grant hesitated before responding, his brow furrowing. It's almost as if it's artificial. A structure. It shouldn't be here." Aurora's curiosity piqued. She tapped a few buttons on her console. The ship's sensors hummed to life, and a strange reading appeared on the screen. It was faint but unmistakable. A powerful energy signature, much stronger than anything they had seen in this region of space before. It wasn't just a random anomaly. It was something deliberate. "Is it a ship?" Aurora asked, narrowing her eyes. "No," Grant replied. "It looks more like a relic, an artifact of some kind. But it's not just any relic. There's something off about it." The captain stood up, moving toward the back of the command deck, where Lieutenant Elena Parker was monitoring the ship's scientific instruments. She was an expert in ancient technologies, and if anyone could decipher what they were looking at, it would be her. "Lieutenant, any ideas?" Aurora asked. Elena, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for her no-nonsense attitude, turned from her station and peered at the screen. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This is not possible," she murmured. "The energy readings are off the charts. We're talking about a source of power that's never been seen before. It's ancient, no doubt, but I don't think it's even human." Aurora raised an eyebrow. "You mean alien?" Elena nodded. "Yes, but not like anything we've encountered. This technology, whatever it is way beyond anything I've ever studied." The crew exchanged glances, a chill running down their spines. Humanity had made contact with alien civilizations in the past, but none had left anything this complex behind. The EOS was the first to encounter such a find. Captain Lyons made a quick decision. "Prepare for a close-range scan. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Lieutenant, gather a team. We'll be making an immediate landing." The ship descended through the layers of gas and dust, its engines thrumming softly as it made its way toward the source of the mysterious signal. As they neared the location, the screen flickered, revealing a large cylindrical object floating in the vast emptiness of space. It was unlike anything they had seen before. The object was black, its surface smooth and shiny, almost reflecting the stars around it. Strange glyphs were etched across its surface, glowing faintly with a cold, eerie light. It was perfectly still, suspended in space, as if waiting for someone to find it. The longer the crew stared at it, the more uneasy they became. This wasn't just a random artifact. It felt deliberate, like it had been placed there for a reason. "What the hell is that?" asked Ensign Mark Davies, one of the junior officers, his voice thick with awe and apprehension. "I don't know," Aurora replied, "but we're about to find out." They docked the EOS near the mysterious object and began preparations for an EVA, extravehicular activity, mission. The air was thick with tension, the crew aware that they were about to make history and possibly face danger in the process. Aurora, Elena, and 3 other crew members suited up in their EVA gear. They boarded a smaller shuttle and made their way to the object's surface, the air inside the shuttle heavy with anticipation. As they neared the artifact, the shuttle's external lights illuminated the strange glyphs, casting long shadows over the metallic surface. It was as though the artifact was alive, responding to the presence of the humans. Alina's voice crackled over the comms. "There's a hatch. It looks like it could open. But the structure is so old, and the readings are fluctuating. We're treading in uncharted territory here, Captain. We don't have a choice. We need to open it," Aurora said. "Let's do it carefully and stay alert." With their magnetic boots securely fastened to the surface, the team approached the hatch. It was unlike any door they had seen. Smooth, seamless, and almost organic in its design. Alina studied it closely, her fingers tracing the surface, and to her surprise, it responded. The glyphs on the artifact flickered brighter, and with a soft hiss, the hatch slowly began to open. The moment the hatch opened, a cold, otherworldly chill swept over the crew. Inside, there was nothing but darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the light from their suits. It was a hollow chamber, far larger than they had expected, with walls covered in more glowing glyphs. The air inside smelled stale, but there was an undeniable presence in the space, something ancient, something powerful. Aurora stepped forward, her heart racing, and as she did, the silence of the chamber was broken by a low hum. It was a sound they could feel in their bones, vibrating through the walls of the artifact. Alina's scanner beeped frantically, registering unusual energy readings. "This isn't just a relic," Alina said quietly. "This is a message, a warning." Before anyone could respond, a voice, clear and resonant, echoed through their comms. It wasn't coming from the ship, nor from their suits. It was coming from the walls themselves. "You are not meant to find this." The crew froze, the blood in their veins turning cold. The voice was unmistakable, but there was no explanation, no sign of where it came from. Aurora's hand went to her sidearm, her mind racing with thoughts. What kind of technology was this? Who had left it behind? And more importantly, why? The voice continued, the words now etched into their minds, each syllable carrying an unnatural weight. "You have awoken something that should remain buried. Humans, you are the last species we ever thought would discover us." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They knew something significant was happening, something beyond their control. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't just an innocent explorer, it was a threat. As the words echoed in their minds, the crew realized something that chilled them to the core. The galaxy in all its vastness saw humans as the most insane species to ever exist, not because of their lack of intelligence, but because of their boundless, reckless drive. A drive that, when pushed far enough, could defy the very laws of nature. The hum grew louder, and the walls of the chamber began to shake. Something was awakening, something that had been dormant for eons, and it was now very much aware of them. The crew had unwittingly set something into motion. They were no longer just explorers. They were now part of a much larger, much more dangerous story. And what they would soon discover would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. But they didn't know yet. What awaited them was far more terrifying than anything they could imagine. The crew of the EOS stood frozen inside the alien artifact, the echo of the voice still reverberating in their minds. The walls trembled as if responding to some unseen force, and the strange hum that filled the chamber grew louder, vibrating in their very bones. Aurora, the captain, had never felt more out of control, her instincts screaming at her to get out. Yet curiosity, no, obsession, held her rooted in place. Alina Parker, the ship's lead scientist, was the first to break the silence. Her hands shook slightly as she held up her scanner, the device whirring and flashing with chaotic readings. The energy surges from the artifact were off the scale, unlike anything they'd ever encountered. "This doesn't make sense," Alina muttered under her breath, her voice trembling. "The readings are completely inconsistent. One moment, "It's inert," and the next, "It's like it's alive." Aurora didn't have the luxury of time. They needed answers. Fast. The unknown voice had left a chilling message, one that warned them of something far bigger than they could comprehend. They had awakened something ancient, something far beyond the reach of any human civilization. "Lieutenant," Aurora said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "Tell me what you're seeing. What is this place?" Elena hesitated. She was staring at the scanner, her brow furrowed in concentration. This is not just a structure. It's a repository, a data vault, I think. I've seen similar designs in ancient human history. Temples, vaults, places of knowledge. But this is far more complex, far older. Older than anything we know. Asked Commander Grant, his voice laced with skepticism. "That's impossible. We've charted ancient alien artifacts before, but nothing like this." Elena shook her head, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. "I know, but I can't explain it. It's as if the very fabric of the artifact is designed to withstand eons of time. If my readings are correct, this place has been here far longer than any civilization in this galaxy, maybe even longer than we can imagine. Longer than humanity itself." Aurora asked, raising an eyebrow. Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, and that's not all. This artifact isn't just a relic. It's a warning." Before anyone could respond, the hum from the walls intensified, and a new series of glyphs appeared, glowing brighter than before. They moved, shifting across the surface like a language, one that none of them could decipher. Suddenly, the air around them seemed to thicken, and the temperature in the chamber dropped. "What the hell is happening?" Davies asked, his voice panicked as his breath visibly fogged in front of him. "I don't know," Elena said, backing away from the wall, her hand pressed to her chest. "But I think we're about to find out." A low, rumbling sound emanated from deep within the artifact, like the growl of some ancient beast awakening from a long slumber. The walls shifted again, revealing a hidden passage leading deeper into the heart of the structure. "Captain," Elena began, her voice tight, "this place wasn't just built, it was intentionally sealed. Whatever is deeper inside, it was meant to be hidden, to be forgotten." Aurora felt a cold sweat trickle down her back. "Then why did it call to us?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Elena replied grimly. "Whoever or whatever left this artifact here wanted someone to find it. But why us? Why humans?" The words of the voice from earlier echoed in Aurora's mind. "Humans, you are the last species we ever thought would discover us." It was clear now that humanity wasn't just some innocent bystander in this cosmic drama. They had been pulled into something much bigger, something that was now watching them. Aurora's gaze hardened. "We've come this far. We need to go deeper." Without waiting for another word, she turned and began walking toward the passage, her team falling into step behind her. The air felt heavier with each step they took, and the strange, distant hum vibrated beneath their feet. The passage led them down into what seemed like the heart of the artifact. The walls were adorned with more symbols, none of which were familiar to the crew. They could only guess at their meaning. It was as if the walls themselves were telling a story, an ancient forgotten history that had long been buried. As they walked deeper into the structure, it became clear that whatever was inside wasn't just a relic. It was a record, a message for whoever dared to uncover it. The chamber they entered next was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a massive hall, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor covered in a strange dark liquid that shimmered like oil. In the center of the room stood a giant crystalline structure, pulsating with energy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What is this?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible as she approached the crystal. "This," Aurora began, her voice hoarse, "is the heart of the artifact." As they all stared at the crystal, its light began to flicker. A low hum filled the room. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the hum ceased. The crystal pulsed once more, and then a projection, Holographic images began to materialize before them. The images were like nothing they had ever seen. It was as though a window had been opened to another time, another civilization. The images depicted humanoid beings, their faces obscured by shadows, but their actions were unmistakable. They were creating something massive, something that radiated an energy unlike anything they had ever encountered. As the images continued, they saw the beings pushing the limits of their own technology, bending the laws of physics, creating weapons of unimaginable power. But then the images shifted. A great war began. The humanoid beings fought against each other. Their advanced technology now turned against them. They were destroying their own civilization, their own creations, as if their reckless pursuit of power had consumed them. The last image was a violent explosion, a cosmic storm that swallowed entire planets, leaving only silence in its wake. Aurora felt a chill run down her spine. The story that unfolded before her was one of madness, of beings who had pushed themselves to the brink of destruction. They had been reckless, consumed by their own power. But what was even more terrifying was the realization that the projections seemed to be warning them. The voice from before returned, its tone now full of warning, filled with the weight of centuries of despair. We were once like you. We, too, were a species consumed by our own insanity. But we paid the price. We created this weapon, this curse, and now we are no more. You are the last to know the truth. And you are the last to be given a choice. The hologram flickered once more, and the image of a solitary figure appeared. This being, unlike the others, looked calm, resigned. The figure raised its hand as if to touch something beyond the veil of time, and the image faded. What did it mean? Grant asked, his voice strained. It means, Elena whispered, her voice trembling, that humanity is on the verge of making the same mistakes. We have discovered something beyond our understanding, something that could either save us or destroy us. The beings who left this message, their insanity was their downfall. And now it's our turn to decide whether we'll repeat their mistakes. Aurora's heart raced as the full weight of the situation hit her. The artifact wasn't just a relic, it was a warning. And they had only just begun to unravel the terrifying truth about their place in the universe. The projection faded, leaving the crew standing in the eerie silence of the chamber. They were no longer just explorers. They were the inheritors of a legacy of madness and destruction. And now, they had to make a choice. Would they be the next species to fall victim to their own hubris, or would they find a way to avoid the fate that had befallen those before them? Aurora stared at the now darkened crystal. The hum had stopped, but the words from the message rang in her ears. You are the last to know the truth. And you are the last to be given a choice. The choice would come soon. And it would come with consequences beyond anything they could imagine. The walls of the alien artifact seemed to close in around the crew of the Eos as they stood in the chamber, their minds reeling from the horrifying revelation they had just uncovered. The images that had appeared before them were a grim prophecy, a warning of humanity's potential downfall. The ancient beings who had once inhabited this galaxy had created something so powerful, so destructive, that their own civilization had been erased. And now, the message echoed in their minds. You are the last to know the truth, and you are the last to be given a choice. Aurora Lyons, captain of the Eos, stood at the center of the chamber, her heart pounding as the implications of what they had learned began to sink in. The hum from the artifact had stopped, and the once glowing walls were now silent, their alien glyphs dark and lifeless. But the unease in the pit of her stomach remained. We have to leave. Elena Parker, the ship's lead scientist, said quietly, her voice shaky with fear. This place, it's a trap. The warning is clear. We've triggered something, and now it's hunting us. Where do we go? Commander Grant asked, his voice low and tense. How do we stop it? Aurora turned toward him, her face grim. We don't know yet, but we need to get back to the ship, and we need to warn Earth. Whatever this is, it's far beyond anything we've encountered. We've disturbed something far too powerful for us to control." The tension in the room was palpable. The crew was not just facing a physical threat. They were confronted with an existential one. If the ancient being's warnings were true, humanity had unknowingly stumbled into a battle for its very survival, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As the crew made their way back to the entrance of the artifact, the ground beneath them trembled. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with an energy that was unmistakably hostile. The artifact, once a silent observer, now seemed to be awakening, reacting to their presence. Every step they took felt like a mistake, as though they were being watched by unseen eyes. "We need to move faster," Elena urged, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "This place isn't just a relic. It's a weapon, and we just activated it." Aurora nodded, her mind racing. The message had been clear. Humanity was being hunted. By who? By what? They didn't know, but they couldn't stay here any longer. Every second they spent in the artifact increased the danger they were in. The crew reached the hatch, the same one they had used to enter the artifact. Aurora pressed the activation button, and the hatch slowly slid open, revealing the dimly lit expanse of space outside. The EOS was waiting for them, but as they began to move toward the shuttle, a low rumble filled the air. The walls of the artifact began to shift, the glyphs lighting up once more, casting an eerie glow. The hum that had once filled the chamber returned, louder than ever, and this time it was accompanied by a series of strange mechanical noises. Something was coming. "Move. Now," Aurora barked, urgency lacing her voice. The crew broke into a run, racing for the shuttle. The ground beneath their feet was shaking violently now, and the walls of the artifact seemed to be closing in. But just as they reached the shuttle, a sudden explosion rocked the structure, sending shockwaves through the entire chamber. The team staggered, thrown off balance by the blast. Aurora's heart raced as she turned to see a massive section of the artifact crumble, revealing a gaping hole in the side of the structure. Through the dust and debris, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A dark, shadowy figure moved toward them, emerging from the wreckage. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were indistinct, as if made of smoke and shadows. The figure was tall, towering over them, its movements fluid and unnatural. Its presence sent a shiver of terror through Aurora's spine. "It's here," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "The hunter." The shadowy figure stepped forward, its form flickering in and out of existence as if it were an illusion. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed a bright, unsettling red. And then, in a voice that sent chills through the crew, it spoke. "You have awakened me," it said, its voice both deep and cold, like 1,000 whispers echoing in their minds. "And now, you will pay the price." Aurora's mind raced as she took in the terrifying figure before her. It wasn't human, nor was it entirely alien. It was something else, a being created by the artifact, an entity born of the ancient weapon that had been sealed away for eons. "Elena, what the hell is that?" Grant demanded, his voice filled with panic. "It's the hunter," Elena replied, her face pale. "The one the ancient beings warned us about. It's been waiting for someone to wake it, and now it's free." The shadowy figure took another step forward, its presence growing more intense, more oppressive. The crew could feel it in the air, the very essence of danger, of doom. "We need to get to the shuttle," Aurora said, her voice calm despite the fear racing through her. Now, the crew turned and ran toward the shuttle, the shadowy figure following them, its footsteps silent but inexorable. As they climbed into the shuttle and began the ascent back to the EOS, Aurora glanced back, her eyes meeting the dark figure's glowing red gaze. It was closing in on them, its form flickering as if it were phasing in and out of existence. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and they shot into the sky, leaving the artifact behind. But Aurora knew this was far from over. The hunter wasn't just a creature. It was a force, a manifestation of something much older, much more powerful than they had anticipated. And now, it was hunting them. As they broke free of the artifact's gravitational pull, the EOs came into view, floating like a lifeline in the cold void of space. But the moment they attempted to dock, the warning lights on the shuttle flared to life. "Something's wrong," Elena said, her voice strained with panic. "The EOs, it's being sabotage." Aurora's heart skipped a beat as she looked at the control panel. The EOs wasn't responding to the shuttle's docking sequence. It was as if the ship itself was under attack. She slammed her fist against the console in frustration. "It's the hunter," she muttered. "It's stopping us from reaching the ship." "Can we make it to the escape pods?" Grant asked, his face pale. "No," Aurora said firmly. "We need to regain control of the ship. We'll have to outsmart it." The shuttle continued to approach the EOs, but the closer they got, the more the EOs seemed to resist. The dark figure, the hunter, was not just an enemy. It was manipulating the very fabric of the ship, cutting off their escape routes. "Get ready," Aurora ordered, her voice steady despite the panic in her chest. "We're going to board manually." The shuttle slammed into the side of the EOs, its docking clamps securing them in place. The crew quickly suited up and prepared to board the main ship. Aurora was the first to exit the shuttle, her pulse racing as she set foot on the cold metal floor of the EOs. She knew that the hunter was not far behind, and the time to act was now. The hunt had begun. The tension aboard the EOs was palpable. Aurora Lyons paced in the command center, her hands clasped tightly behind her back as she stared at the ship's view screen, which displayed the dark void of space. Outside, the stars seemed distant, almost indifferent to the turmoil unfolding within the ship. Inside, the crew was barely holding on, their lives hanging by a thread as the shadowy figure, the hunter, closed in on them with unrelenting force. Aurora's mind was racing. The hunter, the very manifestation of the artifact's power, had infiltrated the EO systems. It had twisted the ship's structure, controlling its systems and using them to block their every escape attempt. They were trapped, and every moment they spent waiting felt like a ticking time bomb. "It's only a matter of time before it gets us," Elena said quietly, her face pale and weary. She sat at the science station, her fingers flying over the control panel, trying to override the system blocks, but the hunter's influence was too strong. "We're running out of options." Commander Grant stood at the tactical station, his hands gripping the controls tightly. "There's nothing we can do. We're outmatched." Aurora took a deep breath, steadying herself. The crew was losing hope, but she couldn't let that happen. Not yet. There had to be something, anything, that they could use to turn the tide. The message from the ancient beings flashed in her mind again. "You are the last to know the truth, and you are the last to be given a choice." A choice. That was the key. The ancient beings had given them a choice, but they hadn't told them what that choice was. What if the weapon wasn't just a tool of destruction? What if there was another way to use it, something they hadn't yet considered? "I'm not giving up," Aurora said firmly, her voice cutting through the despair. "We're not going down without a fight." "But what's our fight, Captain?" Grant asked, turning toward her. "The hunter is everywhere. It controls the ship's systems. We don't have the firepower, and we don't have the time." Aurora turned to face her crew, her eyes locking onto each of them, searching for the strength they all had deep inside. "You're right. We don't have firepower, but we have something the hunter doesn't. Humanity's sheer will to survive. Our unpredictability. Our insanity." Elena raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Aurora's lips curled into a small but determined smile. "The ancient beings were wrong about us. They saw our drive as a flaw, but it's our greatest strength. They never understood how far we would go, how much we would sacrifice, and how much we would fight to survive. The hunter might be powerful, but it's just a tool, and tools can be outsmarted." Grant looked at her, skepticism on his face, And how exactly are we supposed to outsmart it, Captain? Aurora stepped toward the center of the room, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable confidence. We can't fight it in the traditional way. It controls everything: communications, navigation, the ship's systems. But what if we think differently? What if we stop trying to fight it directly, and instead use its own power against it? Alina's eyes widened. You mean, what if we let it think it's won? Aurora nodded. Exactly. If we can make it believe that it has completely overwhelmed us, it will drop its guard. We won't have to overpower it. We just have to outsmart it. The crew fell silent, processing the plan. It was risky. No, it was insane. But that was the point. If they were going to survive, they had to embrace the madness of humanity's will to defy the odds. I'll initiate the system overload, Alina said, her voice determined. If we make it look like we're completely at the mercy of the hunter, it will take full control of the ship's systems. That's when we strike. Grant frowned. And what's the plan after that? We'll be completely at its mercy. We won't be, Aurora replied, her eyes glinting with purpose. We'll be in its mercy, but we'll have the one thing it doesn't expect. We'll have a weakness. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but there was a spark in their eyes now. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity's insane determination would give them a chance. The final confrontation. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Alina worked furiously at her station, modifying the ship's systems to send false signals, signals that would make it appear as though the crew had given up, as though the hunter had successfully taken control. Meanwhile, Aurora stood at the helm, watching the view screen with unblinking eyes, as if willing the ship to survive. Grant paced in the background, his mind racing with questions, but he trusted Aurora. She had never steered them wrong before. Ready? Aurora asked, turning to face Alina. Alina looked at her, her face pale but determined. Ready as I'll ever be. Then let's do this. The final sequence was set into motion. Alina initiated the fake system overload, sending out false signals that would make it appear as if the crew was giving up, as if they were completely overwhelmed by the hunter's power. The ship's lights flickered, and the engines sputtered, giving the illusion of complete failure. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was suffocating. Then the hunter's voice filled the room, as cold and menacing as ever. You have failed. You are mine. Aurora gripped the arms of her chair, her heart racing. The moment of truth had arrived. She nodded at Alina. Now. Alina pressed a sequence of buttons, and suddenly, the ship's power surged. The EO's systems came to life with a jolt, a complete reversal of the fake overload. The hunter, caught off guard, found itself trying to recalibrate, struggling to regain control of the systems it had believed it had mastered. But it was too late. The hunter had underestimated humanity's ability to survive, to adapt, to fight in ways that no machine could predict. In its hubris, it had let its guard down, and now it was facing the unpredictable madness of human ingenuity. Aurora stood up, her voice commanding. Now, we take back control. With the ship's systems restored and the hunter temporarily disoriented, the crew moved quickly to override the final security protocols. The hunter's influence began to wane, its presence flickering as it fought to regain dominance over the EOs. But humanity's determination was unstoppable. Together, they managed to lock the hunter out of the ship's systems. And just like that, the hunter, an ancient force of destruction, was no more. Its power crumbled under the weight of humanity's unyielding spirit. The aftermath. The EOs floated in the void of space, the silence now oppressive, but not in the same way as before. It was a silence of victory. They had done the impossible. They had survived. The hunter was gone, and the artifact was sealed once again. Aurora sat in her chair, her eyes closed as she took a deep breath, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. They had faced an ancient force beyond comprehension, and they had triumphed. Not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to give up. Because they were human. Elena walked up to her, a tired but relieved smile on her face. I didn't think we could pull it off. But we did. Aurora smiled back. We didn't just pull it off. We proved something. What's that? That no matter what the universe throws at us, humanity will always find a way, no matter how insane it seems. Grant joined them, his expression one of quiet admiration. You were right, Captain. We may not be the strongest, but we're the most unpredictable. Aurora looked out at the stars, her heart swelling with pride. And that's exactly why we'll always survive. Because no matter how insane it gets, we're always willing to fight, to adapt, to push beyond the impossible. The crew stood together, looking out at the vast, silent galaxy. They had faced the darkness, and they had emerged victorious. Humanity was indeed insane, but it was that very insanity that had saved them.